Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Marcella Deniston. Thanks for joining us today for the Managing Risk and Compliance on a Budget webcast. We're going to give everybody just another minute or so to hop on, and then we're going to get started. All right, let's get started. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. We are here today for a webinar on managing risk and compliance on a budget. We have Scott Dowley here, who is our VP of Product, who will be presenting our new Foresite integrated management solution, which helps our customers manage risk and compliance through automation and solution-based products. So Scott here has a long history of security operations. He got his start as a Navy IT person and worked as, Scott, what's the exact title that you had as chief?
Oh, the Headquarters U.S. Stratcom Chief of Network Operations and Defense.
Yep, so obviously a lot of background in defense operations. And Scott is going to walk us through not only the Foresite integrated risk management solution, but how you can utilize it to basically get compliant faster and without spending as much money on consulting services. So just some quick housekeeping items before we get started here. There is going to be a Q&A session afterwards. So there's an Ask Questions area where you can all ask some questions. So please feel free to populate your questions within this area while we're going through the presentation, and we will address your questions afterwards. Also, any kind of questions that you may have with related content, you can click on this related content area, and it will give you access to a Foresite integrated management solutions worksheet, as well as the website with all of the information for our product. And last but not least, if you would like to get access to the Foresite integrated risk management solution, you can click on this request access button, fill out the form, and that will get you initial access to the product. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, and he'll start the presentation.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. The idea here is we're just going to go through some slides to kind of put out the problem statement, kind of put out what the product is all about, and then we'll kick into a live demo and show you the features and functions of our firm product as well. So getting started, let's go ahead and kick into the slides here. So the problem statement is such, right? Mid-market compliance is complex. Compliance is complex, right? It's kind of icky. It's not as cool as it could be, you know, all of these things, right? There's over 100, there's actually well over 300 compliance standards. There's not an expert in all of them. Organizations spend quite a bit of their cybersecurity budget on compliance, and a lot of that comes in the form of point-in-time assessments. And compliance today is very manual, right? There are tools out there that make it easier, like RSA Archer, a lot of spreadsheet calculations that go on, control mapping, things of that nature. But there's no one system that really takes in everything and absorbs all the documentation, policy, practice, technology things that an organization is doing to, you know, really make this easier. Again, the slides kind of say it, right? Most compliance today is point in time, and point in time doesn't really do a business justice from the sense of, ever evolving cyber operations environments and ever evolving business requirements and business needs, right? So the point in time compliance is great when you get assessed, but from a maturity standpoint and from a continuous compliance standpoint, it does not account for all the ever changing things that happen in a typical business. So enter Foresite Integrated Risk Management, or FIRM, right? It's a SaaS-based offering. It is pretty simply an automated compliance tool. And I'll get into the details when we get into the demo. You can perform risk assessments within the tool. You can perform as many assessments as you want to. We have well over 240 compliance frameworks that we support. We offer a continuous monitoring aspect. If you are a customer of Foresite and you have the Provision SIM, you automatically get continuous monitoring as a piece of this. So continuous monitoring is very important to us. And it really is a one-stop shop for all things you need for compliance, compliance maturity, and assessment readiness, right? That's really what the tool is meant to be. So again, getting into the details of the tool, and if I'm going too fast, just to warn the audience, right? I do talk kind of fast. If I'm going too fast and you guys need me to slow down, just throw a question in there or tag Marcella or Ryan, and they'll tell me to slow down a little bit. So I'm going to continue to press on. You're going to hear these three words quite a bit throughout this presentation and through the demo: policy, practice, and technology, right? And it says it right here on the screen, right? Policy: are your policies well written with respect to your compliance framework? Practice: are you actively doing the blocking and tackling, day-to-day blocking at your firewall, policy management stuff, user onboarding stuff that is required from your compliance framework? And technology: do you have the appropriate technology in your environment to satisfy the controls of your compliance framework, right? And those are the three key areas that we score within the FIRM tool that allow a user, a customer, an organization to really see where they stand with compliance and what work they have to do to achieve full compliance with no findings. Obviously, the system is designed to get you ready to get into an audit and show that continuous maturity as your organization continues its cyber journey. And it's a forever journey, just like everything else. There's no, again, going back to the point in time stuff, you can do a point in time assessment using this tool, but it's not what it's really built for. This is a continuous use tool, and it is subscription based, so you can use it as much as you want to, as long as you have an active subscription. And really what it does, again, is it gets you ready for that audit and assessment from that third party. And when that assessment happens, it makes it much easier for that auditor, that assessor, that third party person to come in and view your real estate with respect to your compliance, right? So it just makes the whole process easier from end to end. We also have a supply chain component that is a existing feature of the tool, but it is not live yet. And I'll get into that a little bit in the demo, but the option is available and will be available within the next week or two to allow you as an organization to really vet your supply chain, right? Supply chain is a big concern. You look at the oil pipeline attacks that happened about a year ago that shut down the oil pipelines on the East Coast. You look at the third-party activity that happened that allowed SolarWinds to take place. You look at a lot of the third-party things that happen, and the question naturally comes up, how do I as an organization appropriately vet the suppliers that need my data to provide their service or goods? And right now today, what you typically would get is an attestation letter, right, that says they did a point-in-time assessment, they are compliant with PCI or HIPAA or NIST or whatever the requirements are. We take that a step further under the supply chain management, and we actually, provide a mechanism for you as an organization to put your supply chain vendors through a compliance, a brief and very limited compliance assessment that gives you a better understanding of whether or not they're actually doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. Again, an attestation letter is great, but those attestation letters are every single time they've been assessed, and that could be every year, every 3 years. It depends on the framework. The supply chain component of this tool is really opening up the ability for you as a customer to continuously assess your supply chain partners as well as your own organization to ensure that they consistently meet the standards of the compliance framework that you all are required to abide by. And that's really the idea behind the supply chain component. I'll get into that into the demo. All right, about the tool itself, we provide a lot of really good capability within the tool. So we provide templates to customers. Templates are those policy templates that are very hard to, kind of come by. Most organizations don't have all the policy documentation that they need. So we provide those templates at no charge as part of the subscription. And these are very valuable templates. They're gold standard templates. They're made to be used by the user, by the customer, make their own and re-upload into the system for scoring. And again, I'll get into that in the demo. MITRE attack simulation and vulnerability scanning, these are add-on services that we apply as a part of the firm overlay. But it's important to note that if you want to see how your policies align to the MITRE attack framework, we have that as a framework that is mapped behind the scenes. It's one of the over 240 frameworks that we support. And when you upload your vulnerability scanning data, it gives us a lot of great information about, whether or not your organization is actually doing the things that it's supposed to be doing. The tool provides for technology assessment and gap analysis, evidence assignment and tracking, all the various things that you would do in a compliance audit or in an audit prep. We allow for within the tool, and we make it very easy for you and your team to be able to utilize these items to be able to get yourself compliant and maintain that compliance. And that's the whole point here. And again, the continuous operations monitoring, again, no more point in time assessments. Again, and that's really there if you are a customer of Provision, if you're a customer of our Provision SIM. We're working on some enhancements that will allow us to attach to other SIMs that are out there, like Splunk Cloud, Securonics, other major SIM players, SaaS SIM players in the market. But right now, the continuous operations monitoring is only available for the Provision SIM. All right, we're almost through with the slides. Just bear with me. Again, what does the tool allow you to do? All the things on the slide, right? It's a simple and easy to use interface that allows you to get yourself to compliance. It allows you to understand where your gaps are. It provides that POAM, that plan of action and milestone, so you know exactly what you need to do next in order to get further into the compliance maturity, what actions you need to take, policies you need to update, technology you need to update. All those things are called out. But keep in mind that the system is only as good as the data that you provided, right? So if you're not providing it 100% of the data, it's not going to be a 100% solution. So the onus is on the user, just like anything else, to ensure that you're providing the system with the most and best appropriate data as possible, right? Excuse me. Again, it's a simple and sustainable process, right? The question I'm sure in everybody's mind is, yeah, that's great, Scott. Sounds like a pretty cool tool, but how long does it take me to do it? This is a very generic set of timelines that we have going through a series of internal assessments that we've done against ourselves and some other customers that have been on the product for a little while. The initial scope, the initial loadout of the assessments and the questionnaires and everything like that, you figure it's about a day. Scans and assessments, again, uploading the latest vulnerability data that you have or tying in the continuous monitoring piece, that's roughly 2 to 3 days. Data onboarding, that's really your policy uploading. That's probably the longest piece because the policies, if you do not have a central location for all your policies, it's going to take some time for you as an organization to gather that data around and upload it into this system, right? So we figured 2 to 3 days for that. But really, if you look at this whole thing, inside of a week, if you dedicate some time to this tool, you can get yourself towards and further into a compliance maturity stance than you perhaps are before you started. And you can do that within a week. A typical assessment run-up or assessment readiness posture for an organization can last up to a month, right? It's that last 30-day sprint before the auditor comes on site. And you can do all of those things that would normally take you roughly a month. You can do those in a week or less. For us, we offer a white glove service to this. Our internal experts can help you get there much faster within probably 2 to 3 days. So that's it for the slides. I'm going to kick over and share my screen and go through a live demo here and just walk everybody through, how the tool works and, all the features that we have available. Marcella, I do have a question for you. Do you want me to pause here for the questions that have been asked, or do you want me to continue on and answer these at the Q&A in the end?
Why don't we go ahead and jump into the demo, and then we can pause for Q&A at the end.
Sounds good. All right, so let me share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen? Let's try that. Can everybody see my screen? I assume yes. Marcella, can you see it?
I can see it, Scott.
Scott, go ahead.
All right,
Yeah.
awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, I'm going to assume everybody else can see it too. So I just did an assessment prior to this call to get everything ready and some of the documentation uploaded, but we'll go through it again very, very quickly, right? So what's going to happen before we even get there? What's going to happen is you access this tool via Provision, right? So you go into Provision, which is our main platform. It is our Provision SIM. It's where all of our device management activity happens. It's basically where every product and service that we offer as a company at Foresite takes place. So naturally, you would access this via hitting this firm button at the top once you have a subscription. What that does is that launches you into a net new tab or new window, and you begin from there. We start at the top with the Provision risk summary. And really what this screen is meant to do is if you are a Provision SIM customer or we have the appropriate amount of data, what we're going to do is we're going to summarize all of your risk scores or your risk profile based on the events that we're seeing out of our SIM or the events that we're getting from your data source versus the vulnerabilities that you have in your environment through that vulnerability data upload versus your maturity score, right? So what this is designed to do is to give you as a user a holistic kind of overview for your entire cyber threat landscape. So you have your active risks that are being generated on a day-to-day basis. This is what the SIM is seeing. You have your active vulnerabilities. This is your vulnerability upload or vulnerability link via API that we'll have available soon. And really, it overlays that with all of your maturity and compliance framework. Now, this slide is, or I'm sorry, this screen is very busy right now because we've got a lot of demo data in here. But the idea is that when you look at all of the events that have generated within your time frame, you can look and overlay your different policy, practice, and technology scores over this to see any gaps that are available or any gaps that are present so you know exactly what you need to do and exactly what you need to fix next. The two biggest things I'm going to tell everybody to pay attention to are these top two scores. So the first one you have is obviously your risk score, and that's derived from any SIM source that we can pull into the system, the Provision SIM itself, as well as that vulnerability data that we ask for as a part of the assessment. That gets you a risk score, and it's based on severity, criticality, CVSS scoring, all these various things that we use to rack and stack the criticality and priority of active events in your environment. And this number over here is the maturity score. This is completely and purely derived from the firm tool itself. And it is your maturity score. It is how well your organization is adherent to your given compliance framework. So if you have no findings and everything's 100%, you're going to get the max possible score. If you have work to do, your score is going to be less than the maximum possible, obviously, right? So that's what this first page is really all about. And we say it up here just to make sure we drive it home. If you enroll in Provision services right now today, you automatically get roughly 53% coverage under your maturity framework just by having your log sources feed into the Provision SIM. The scores kind of vary, but up to 53%. The lowest we've seen to date is 47%. So the point is you get a lot of great immediate coverage to your maturity score if you have your log sources going into the Provision SIM. All right. So again, this is the heart and soul of Firm. This is what Firm is. This is, what we just talked about in the slides. So I'm just going to dive into it. What's going to happen when you go in here is I'm in a demo environment, so you can see previous assessments that we've done, a little maturity timeline, and I'll get into all that stuff here in just a second. But what would happen as a new user is you would go in and you create a new assessment. It kicks off the GUI, and you select first the compliance framework that you want. And again, we have over 240 available, right? So if I want NIST, we have NIST 853 Rev 4 and 5, CMMC, let's see, I can pull up HIPAA, I can pull up, let's see here, GDPR. The point is that we have a lot of frameworks that, are typical and are supported. We mainly focus on the continental United States because that's where this technology was developed, but we do support, as you can see, any framework that is out there. And what's really great about this tool or this product and capability is if you happen to have a framework that is unique to your organization, right? Like you're at Acme International and you've created your own compliance framework that has nothing to do with NIST or HIPAA or PCI or any of these other frameworks that are out there. As long as we have the actual controls in the framework and the description of those controls, we can upload that framework as a net new framework just for your organization and have it ready to go inside of 30 minutes. So we constantly are adding new frameworks to the system to be able to support. We obviously also support any custom unique frameworks to an organization. And again, we can have those inside the system ready to go inside of 30 minutes. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to focus on NIST, and we're going to go 853 Rev 5. So what you do is you would select your compliance framework, and then you would go down here and you would select your maturity level. Every compliance framework has a different maturity level in it. Most organizations, if you don't already know what your maturity level should be, you're likely going to be a level 1. So we'll just go level 1. And when that's done, you simply go down and hit next. You're immediately presented with the technology questionnaire. And this questionnaire is generic in nature, and it's generic in nature on purpose. Again, what are we trying to tease out? We're trying to understand, or the system is trying to understand, do you have the appropriate technology in your environment that will satisfy the controls and the framework that you just chose in the previous step, okay? And so we look for these questions, and we provide as much information as we can. It's very difficult to do this, and we're kind of working on retooling this internally, but basically for asset management, do you have an asset management solution? Okay, great, what kind? We offer a series of examples over here if you hover over the question mark that basically says, here's what an asset management system is. Here are examples of open source, consumer, professional, and enterprise. I will tell you from experience that there is no set industry definition of what is and what is not professional versus enterprise. So when the user is filling out this questionnaire, it's very much on them to just, make some assumptions, and you can always go back and change them later, right? So I'm just going to, very quickly fill this out. So asset management, we're going to say professional. Backup and recovery solutions, we're going to say professionals. Do we have a gold image? Yep, we do. It's a Windows Gold image. Do we have a certificate of destruction? Yes, we have a company coming in to do that. Do we have a CMS? Sure do. Do we do continuous monitoring, detection, and response? Ooh, no, we don't. We're going to leave that none. Contract management system, we'll just add that as professional. Data classification technology, destruction technology or service, dedicated DevOps and testing. Again, a lot of these questions are generic in nature. If you do not do any development, do not feel obligated to answer these questions. You can leave them as none because it's going to be important for your organization to answer as accurately as possible, right? So here at Foresite, we do dedicated DevOps and testing, and we're going to go pro on that one just for the argument's sake. Electronic sweeping technologies, do you actively scan your Wi-Fi networks? Encryption at rest, sure, if we use Windows. EDR, yep, and firm. For new customers, we're going to look to modify this questionnaire. For a new customer, if you just signed up for Firm, you're going to be able to say yes to this. Firm 360 is something that we're still working on, so we're going to pull it out of the questionnaire, but it is something that's relevant and will be relevant in the coming probably next 2 to 3 weeks. And really what Firm 360 is, very quickly, is we are partnering with a third-party vendor to basically get that holistic view of your organization. So the third party is going to be able to do a scan, basically, from the internet that says, okay, these are the open ports and protocols, these are the open service accounts, so on and so forth. This is how the internet views your organization. You combine that with the internal audit or the internal compliance adherence that you're doing by using the Firm tool, and you have a 360-degree view of how well your organization is stacking up to not only your maturity model, but it helps you understand what risks are out there within your environment and exposed to the internet, as a secondary item. So we're going to say no on Firm 360. FEM, let's see, do we have a firewall? And again, really, the difference between professional and enterprise really happens, kind of at the firewall, the EDR, the IDS, IPS type of technology. Again, there's really no determined standard about what is and what is not professional versus enterprise. The way I look at this right now is, from a firewall perspective, if I've got a Palo Alto, I don't know, HA5660, it's a high availability pair, it's being controlled by a Panorama server, and I've got 24/7 support from Palo Alto, that's an enterprise solution. If I have a single firewall that's not in an HA pair, I have a single point of failure, that would probably get downgraded to a professional solution because enterprise always has high availability in the mix, right? So those are some of the nuances that you have to think about when you go to fill out this questionnaire. But again, it's to the best of your knowledge. There should be 1 or 2 people within your organization that should be able to fill this out pretty easily. But again, the nuances can potentially trip you up, so it's important not to focus or over-focus on them, and you can always go back and change your scores or change your answers through the assessment. So these aren't locked in, they're not set in stone, these are manipulatable, all those things. So HR management system, IDAM, infrastructure, this is important for everybody to kind of read very carefully. You know, for us, we're fully cloud-based, so we're going to go all the way over to cloud. But a lot of organizations still have like an on-prem Exchange server, but they also use Office 365, and that on-prem Exchange server is just a message transfer agent, right? So it's important to think about those things. Log aggregation preservation systems. You got, you know, do we utilize Splunk? Do you have a log management solution that you utilize? Malware detection, obviously malware sandbox, mobile device management. And I'm just blasting through this to get to the end here. So patch management deployment, physical security filters, filtering purchase management system, risk assessment solution, training sites, VLAN, and VPN, and last one, vulnerability scan solution. We're going to go enterprise on that. So it's roughly 26 to 27 questions in the technology questionnaire. And again, once you hit next on this, what is happening behind the scenes is the system is calculating your technology score. Again, we've already chosen our compliance framework. We chose NIST 853 Rev 5. Now we've answered the technology questionnaire, one of the three key areas, technology, policy, and practice, right? So now that we've answered the technology questionnaire, we get an initial technology score, right? So this is the assessment that I just started, and this is my initial maturity score based off of purely just the technology that I filled out via the questionnaire. So once that happens, you're now into the assessment, okay? So you show up at compliance. Compliance, we've already picked NIST. We've already picked our maturity level. Going up to technology, these are all the answers that we had for the technology questionnaire. And again, you can change these around if you want to, based on, you know, new information coming to light, whatever the case is. The next bit is the attachments. So this is probably one of the more important areas in firm. And this is heavily related to your policies as well as your evidentiary data. So what's going to happen here is any policy document, anything that you have related to your compliance framework, if it's a previous POAM, right, your plan of action milestone, again, those policy documents are very, very important to us. And it doesn't matter to us if it's one gigantic InfoSec policy or if it's a bunch of individual policies. It depends on what your organization has written. But having everything, even if you're not sure if it's related to your compliance, go ahead and upload it. We have a series of machine learning algorithms behind the scenes that are busting open every document and reading every word, every phrase, everything to identify what controls that policy document could and does match up to. So essentially what we're doing here at the documentation level is we're reading everything that you guys have or your organization has, and we're doing that control mapping. And if you've ever been through an audit before, you'll know that this is what an assessor does, but it takes a long time. This happens automatically and is done within minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and upload a test policy, and we're going to say access control, and we're going to go find the file. Excuse me one second while I grab it. There we go, access control, and we're going to hit submit. Oops, sorry. So what happens is you have the option, I'll go back to the attachment upload. You have the option of doing a bulk upload. If you have everything loaded in a zip file, great, go ahead and upload the zip file, we don't care. If you want to upload individual attachments, what you would do is exactly what I just did. You would give it a file name. You would dictate the file type. Is it, you know, policy related? Is it a previous POAM? Is it a vulnerability scan? And for those customers that don't have the Provision SIM, the vulnerability scans are very, very important to us. It helps us identify that practice area. And because it's refreshing on me, I have to continue to go back to it, so just bear with me. But the vulnerability scan specifically that we're looking for is your last organizational-wide credentialed, fully credentialed vulnerability scan. This is a typical scan profile that you have in Rapid7, Qualys, Tenable, whatever the case is. And that credentialed vulnerability scan is most important because it is the deepest level of discovery that the vulnerability scanner in your organization can get to, right? It is allowing the vulnerability scanner to actually, you know, credential log into a host, scan the host and everything else, right? The difference between a credentialed and non-credentialed scan is the difference of several 100,000 vulnerabilities in a typical scan window, right? So the more detail that you can get with your vulnerability scanner, that's the data that we're most interested in because it gives us the best amount of insight into the vulnerabilities you have in your environment. Any misconfigurations from a policy perspective, anything that we can glean out of that vulnerability scan. And again, that's really necessary if you are not a Provision SIM customer. If you are a Provision SIM customer, we still like to have that vulnerability data, but it's not necessarily at the same level of influence as if you were not a Provision SIM customer. So again, with the documentation, you simply upload it. And what's happening behind the scenes is it's being analyzed by the system right now. It's being, the document's being busted open, it's being read. And with respect to file types that we support, we really don't have a preference. It can be a Word document, Excel, PDF. It can be a scanned-in document. We have optical character recognition behind the scenes to be able to read those scanned-in documents. It really doesn't matter to us. So while this is still analyzing, I'm going to move on. But essentially what's going to happen is when it's done being analyzed, you're going to get a score. And once this is scored, I'll come back to this and show you guys all of these things. The next area is the evidentiary data, right? For every assessment that you do, you're going to need to provide evidence that you are, in fact, doing the things that you're supposed to be doing with respect to your compliance to control framework. So what you would do here is, again, this is all based on NIST because NIST is the thing that we chose at the beginning and the maturity levels of 1. So based on the controls in the NIST framework that we've already pre-mapped behind the scenes, we're going to ask for evidence, right? Evidence to showcase that the control self-assessment results are shared with relevant level of management. Give us a screenshot for that. What's great about this section is you can actually either upload your evidence, upload that PNG file, upload that JPEG file of the screen capture, the picture, the whatever, or you can simply link it here. Another thing that we allow for is obviously, within an organization, you're going to have likely multiple people that access this tool. You can then assign this out to any user under your tenant. So this is everybody in Foresite. I can assign this out to them if I so choose, right? So it allows you to spread the load so that you as the individual user that's doing this, it's not all on your shoulders to get it all done. And what would happen is if you were to assign this out to one of your team members, they would simply get an email from Provision, from our Provision platform that says, hey, you've been assigned an evidentiary data, and it would provide them a link, and that link would take them right to this page inside of Firm so that they can provide that evidence that they have been assigned. So let me go back to this and see if it's done scoring. It is not yet. Okay, no big deal. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's a little bit slower. It takes anywhere from about 3 to 5 minutes to score an individual policy document because we are reading everything. And once we're reading it, we're assigning it to all the various controls that are in a framework. So it's, it's not instantaneous for sure, but it is faster than a human being doing it. What's going to happen after that? And I'll come back to the attachment section. Marcella, you had something?
Yeah, so while we're waiting for that, actually, I'd just like to make a quick note. I think that there was an issue with the website link. There's an extra HTTP in there. So if you guys are looking to go on the website, just remove that extra HTTP. I apologize for that error. I couldn't change it after we started the webcast. So I believe there's a new link in the Q&A. Thanks, Bruce Scott, for sharing that out. So it's just https foresite.com/integrated-risk-management in case someone's trying to get to that.
All right. Good stuff. Thank you, Marcella. One other area of the attachment section that I want to highlight that I almost skipped over is the template section, right? We said in the slides that we offer templates. We absolutely do. This is a series of templates that are free for every subscribed user under the service, or under the product, excuse me. Policy templates are a very valuable aspect of any assessment. If you were to Google search for policy assessments right now, you'll find some that are out there for free. A lot of them are paid for, anywhere from $100 up to $5,000 to $7,000 per template. Again, we offer these free under the subscription to this product. And really what these templates are exactly that. They're Word document-based templates. You just click on it, it downloads. But what happens is you open up. Can everybody see this Word document? Yes, they can. Perfect. And you basically make this your own, right? You take the template, you can modify any of the tables. We preload it with some explanation and some words for policy to give you a good head start. So we're not just giving you a blank Word document and say that's a template. No, these are actual templates that are pre-filled out. But it is important for you as the user to take this and make it your own. If you need to add a section, remove a section, whatever, do that, right? And the idea here is once you make it your own, you date it, you put the change record information in there, you save it off, and then what you would do is you would go right back into the tool and you would upload it as an attachment. Once it's uploaded, it gets scored, and then you're good to go, right? Still waiting on the score to happen, so we'll move on. The next section is the overview section. And what the overview section is showing you is basically every single control that you have in your framework and where you score up to each control area. And this is not loading. Of course, it'll happen on a live demo. Bear with me for a second here, everybody. Sorry about that. boy. Exit page. 1 second, everybody. Sorry, I'll stop my screen share. Okay, beauty. Here we go. Got it back up. And here we are. So going right back into the assessment I was showing, here it is. That policy document that I just uploaded has now been scored by the system. So a total possible maximum score of 100, this thing scored out at 69.14. We actually have about 9 decimal places that we knocked off. That'd be too much, too many decimal places to show a user. But basically, we're getting very, very data driven with respect to our score. And how these policies are scored very quickly is we have well over 2,000 policies that we sourced from SANS, ISACA, ISC Squared, NIST. We've sourced these from very large municipality CISO offices, very large county CISO offices. So we've got a very good smattering of what is and what is not considered to be a well-written and mature policy. We consider those our gold standards. So every time you upload a policy of yours, whether it's a template you download from us or it's a policy that you've created, we're scoring it the same way. We're scoring it against those gold standards. Anything less than 100 means that the policy isn't as mature as it could be. And in the POAM section of the product, we call out where the deficiencies are. So we don't just tell you got a negative score and we don't tell you why, right? We tell you that there is a deficiency in the document and we highlight where that deficiency is in the document so you know exactly what needs to be addressed, right? So we try to make this as easy as possible for the user. Excuse me. So once again, once that's done, you have the option of deleting it. You can download this attachment that you just uploaded to modify it. I mean, you can do whatever you want to with it. And then we go to the overview section. Good Lord, please load this time. So I just want to go to the summary. We are going to give this just a second if we can. Let's see if it behaves. Let's see what happens when I refresh. Come on. While this is loading, I'll see if I can talk through it to give it another second before I kick the system. Again, what the overview section is showing you is every single control within the compliance framework that you've chosen at the beginning of your assessment. So every single control broken out by control family, and you have the option of seeing how you scored up against each one of those individual controls. I'm going to stop my screen share real quick and see if I can't figure out what's going on here. So please just bear with me for another 30 to 60 seconds. We should have this sorted out here.
Hi, Scott. We do have a question in the meantime that maybe we can answer. So
yes,
the question is, how are the scores actually calculated for the risk and maturity scores or individual control scores?
Right. So the individual risk scores are calculated based off of what we're seeing inside of the provision sim, right? So the risk score is completely and almost purely derived from the Provision scoring system. So Provision is a sim. We score everything off of criticality based on the CBSS, the signature, the vulnerability that we're seeing, any enrichment that we do with IOCs and threat intelligence. That's where the risk score is coming from with respect to items that we see in the Provision sim. For the risk score over the organization, again, it's more of an overlay. It's a summarized view at the beginning. To be able to understand these are all the risks that we can see from an organizational standpoint based on what's been firing inside of the SIM, and try to overlay it on top of your maturity stance to know that, hey, your gaps in maturity either are or are not related to your risks in the active environment. It's just another way to view the data so that you have a better understanding of your holistic risk profile and risk tolerance for your organization. Hopefully that helps. All right, it loaded, so I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, great. So what you can see here is, again, the overview section, and it's done by control family, right? So you have access control for mobile devices, you have AC-19, and what you're going to see in the system is you're going to see your policy maturity based on the policy documentation you've uploaded. You're going to have your practice maturity based on any vulnerability scans that you've uploaded, any SIM data that we can get our hands on. And then technology maturity, which is related purely to how you answered the technology questionnaire. and your target is going to be what the control is actually looking for. So if your 3 scores average out to above 1 or greater than your target, you're good on the control. You can move on to the next one. You also have the option of editing your score. We don't recommend this for everybody, and it's not working for me right now, but basically if you wanted to go in here and manually manipulate these scores, you could. The system does offer you that ability to do that, but we ask that users don't really play around with that feature unless you know exactly what it is you're doing. This is really reserved for our GRC experts that we offer as part of the white glove overlay in the service. They are the ones that are assessors in this space and have been doing this for a very long time. So they understand at a very nuanced and detailed level what the controls are really calling for, what can be a risk acceptance, what can be a not applicable. So we, again, just ask that users understand what those things are before they go to use them. And again, we'd be happy to work with any customer to help better understand the capabilities here. But the whole point here is you get to view a control by control view of your scores next to every single control in your compliance framework. And this just continues to scroll down for as many controls that exist inside of the compliance framework. Another key feature here that we offer is that one-to-many mapping. Notice that all of these controls are done for NIST 853 Rev 5. Well, let's say for argument's sake, you know that your organization has got to do an ISO 27001 audit coming up in 3 to 6 months. You've already got your documentation loaded, so let's just say, how would I stack up against ISO 27001? And we'll use this one. So what's going to happen behind the scenes is you change your view. So what happens is every single control changes to the ISO control family. And now with the answers to your technology questionnaire that you've already done, with the policy documentation you've already uploaded, with the evidence data you've already uploaded, now you're being scored against ISO. So you can view any other framework that we support inside the system, and you would know where you basically stack up against that new control framework with the data that you've already provided. So it's very valuable from an organizational perspective is if you have more than one compliance framework that you already have to comply with, you can do the manipulation here. If you're thinking about complying with a new framework, somewhere down the road, you can view yourself here and start to understand where you stack up. All before you have to bring an assessor on site, all before you would bring a third-party consultant on site to help your organization get ready if you so chose. So this is a very powerful piece of the tool because it is that one-to-many control mapping. And again, we're using all the data and evidence that you've already given us to apply that to the new set of controls. So again, a very powerful aspect of the tool itself. Going to the summary section, and I'll speed it up a bit because we're running short on time. My apologies. The summary section is just that. It's a summary of your scores based on just the control family, right? So this is your control family, and I'm under ISO right now, so I'll go back to NIST, and you can change the view here as well. All right, let's go to 853, Rev 5, where are you? Excuse me. So again, I'm changing the summary. All the family control changes go back to NIST family controls, and we're looking at our target score versus not, right? And what we offer down here is a series of graphs to kind of, visually view how you're stacking up in the 3 key areas that we're scoring you against, that technology, practice, and policy. And these are all selectable inside the graph, so you can just view technology, you can just view practice, you can just view policy. And we get down to, here's where you stack up between the 3 key areas in each control family. So not the prettiest graphs in the world. There's really no good way to view this data or visualize this data. We've got some data scientists that are working very hard behind the scenes to try to present this data a little bit better, but this is what we offer today. So again, it just allows you that graphical visual view. This is something you would show a CISO, a CEO, a board, whatever, to be able to visually understand where you stack up with respect to a given control family in your control framework or the whole framework as a whole versus each of the 3 key areas that we're scoring you against. The last section is the POAM. This is the output of the product, really. There are multiple outputs, but this is the main output of the product. And what the POAM is going to tell you is exactly what a POAM would be if you were to do an internal audit against yourself. These are the things you need to fix next or need to work on next, close these gaps next, whatever. And we rack and stack them automatically by criticality. So update your standard operating procedures policy. We didn't upload a standard operating procedures policy, so obviously that's going to be called out on the POAM. Because we don't have one, the criticality is high, right? Data protection privacy policy. Again, NIST calls for a data protection privacy policy, but I did not upload one of those at the beginning of the assessment. So of course I'm going to be called out for it, and its criticality is high. So it would just be going back to upload these documents into the system so that they are removed off of the POAM. And it just goes down the list. Again, it tells you if you have a deficiency in a policy document, if you have a deficiency in the technology, if you answered negative on the technology questionnaire, and the controls call for that specific technology, it's going to get called out on the POAM, right? Other things you can do here is for the POAM items, you can assign these out to your team. If the team has access into the firm tool, you can assign this out to your team members to assign POAM items to your team in order to spread the load out to get these POAM items fixed in a more quick fashion than otherwise may have happened, right? Last little bit that I'm going to go for is you have the ability to export your POAM. I mean, most of the time we would ask users to view this inside the tool, but in the event that you want to share this with somebody who doesn't have access to the tool, you can simply export this. It's a CSV export that calls out each one of the fields that we have here. It tells you the thing that needs to be fixed, the criticality of the thing, if it's assigned to anybody, and that's pretty much it, because that's what a POAM is going to show you. You have the option to, as well, at the assessment level, you can export your POAM into any control family that we support. So we're back to viewing this assessment as NIST, and I want to export it as ISO. Let me hit enter, see what happens. Come on. There we are. So again, if I wanted to export this as ISO 27002, all right, then I would just export it as ISO 27002. That changes the controls and the control families behind the scenes so that your POAM is now an ISO 27002 POAM versus a NIST POAM. Just another feature that we allow for here. Last bit, and then I'll stop talking, we'll get to the Q&A, is obviously we know that and the idea here is that you're doing multiple assessments inside the tool, right? We know that doing an assessment starting at the very beginning using the create new assessment button is not the best way to go about it. So we obviously allow for the ability to copy an entire assessment over. You click on the copy button, the system creates an actual copy of everything, and it's loaded up here as your copy. Everything from your last assessment comes over. Your control framework that you chose, your maturity level that you chose, your answer to the technology questionnaire comes over, all of your data comes over from your attachments and evidence, so you don't have to redo any of the work. You can make modifications to what is here to make it much easier for you to do assessment after assessment after assessment. And the idea, again, is that you're doing as many assessments as you can do in here so that your maturity score goes up. You're incrementally improving your security posture with respect to your compliance adherence, and that then increases your maturity score within the system. That pretty well does it for the demo. Being cognizant of the time, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share and we can get into the Q&A. So Marcella, I will kick it back over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Scott. And we want to thank everybody for hopping on. If there are any additional questions, please feel free to place them into the Q&A right now. Otherwise, as mentioned, you can reach out to the related content to actually see the data sheet as well as the website. Just remember to remove the additional HTTP. And we're also providing trial access to this tool. So if you like trial access, go ahead and choose the Get Access button now. Fill out that form, and you will be able to get access to the tool. And we will provide any kind of additional help or support as needed to give you a walkthrough and a demo of how to appropriately use it. All right, I think there's just one more question in here, and the question is, what is set for the future of the Foresite integrated risk management solution? So what's coming, Scott? What can we expect from a new feature perspective?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got a lot of features that we're working on right now. One of the ones that we're working on that's going to be, coming, there's several that are coming in the next couple of weeks, and let me just lay them out. One feature that we're adding is within the overview section, control by control, we're adding basically a checkbox that allows an organization to mark a risk as accepted. For anybody who knows how the risk acceptance game works, you have to have somebody in your organization that is the approving authority. That's usually a C-suite level executive or equivalent. So basically, if you have a control and you have a risk associated with that control, you can mark it as risk accepted, and that would be accepted on your POAM when your auditor comes in to do the assessment. We're adding that functionality. Right now, it's just a node inside the control, and that's not very good. So we're adding that functionality so you can check it off. It removes it from your scoring, and you can move on. We're going to have the same thing in place for a control that is deemed not applicable. Again, not applicable. Hopefully, you know what you're doing when you mark something as not applicable because you have to prove it. But we are going to be offering that functionality as well because we know in a lot of assessments, especially when that third-party assessor comes in, you're going to have risks likely that have been accepted by the organization, and there are going to be some controls that are not applicable to your organization from like a development standpoint. You offload your something to the cloud, so it's no longer a risk on your risk register. Like those items are risk acceptable in nature. We're adding a series of Asia Pacific and European specific controls. So if anybody on here is, your company does business overseas, obviously we can get very, very specific and pedantic with the controls that we have. And you can have multiple tenants inside of the tool, each one with a different control matrix overlaid that is acquiesced to the Asia Pacific region as well as the European Union with respect to any controls that they have over there. We're constantly looking for new controls to load into the system. So our current list is sitting roughly at 262. We know that there's well over 200 more that are out there, but they are very nuanced. This is the NERC SIP stuff that not a lot of people do. This is nuclear power plant generation, all this other kind of fun stuff. We're going to be adding those too, knowing, of course, as we produce and get more of this tool out there to the market, those are going to be the requirements that are necessary. Let's see here. Another feature that we're bringing to bear is the additional one-to-many control mapping. So the view change that I showed in the demo today is not as quick as we'd like it to be. So we're making some enhancements on the back end so that when clicks happen inside the system, they're instant and automatic within the view of the interface as well. So that's another enhancement. It's not necessarily a product enhancement, but we are enhancing the back end to make that faster so the user experience is better. Those are the main new features that are coming down the pipe. We obviously love to hear back from our customers, get as much feedback as we can on the usability of the interface, on an understanding of what some of the things mean within the system itself. So any feedback that anybody has, if you happen to sign up for the free trial or have access to the tool today, we'd love to hear that feedback to make sure that it is the best possible product for our customers.
Thanks, Scott. We got another question in. Does the evidence area of the portal allow for point-in-time artifacts to be saved and potentially utilized in a live audit on initial or follow-on assessments?
Yes. The evidence data that you upload, whether it's a screenshot or a document, it's tagged with a timestamp. So let's say you do an assessment, today, and you upload evidence data, and the evidence window is applicable from January to March, but you don't do your actual assessment until March, that evidence data is still valid for that assessment. All you would do is have to bring that evidence over to the assessment that you're showing the auditor, and that evidence data will still be there and still be valid for the assessment window.
All right, I don't have any more questions here. I want to thank everybody again for joining us. And again, if you want to get access to this product, feel free to click the Get Access Now button. Or you can also visit the website and request a full demo and consultation with our team. Thanks for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.